Okay, so what's up there then, Bulldogs? With another video, and today we are gonna be doing reaction to the brand new film TV video. And this one will be film TV Aang is a bad dad, the last Airbender. So, let's see and find out what this will be about. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe to us for the one us react next. That bell icon so you get notified whenever we upload posts and go live on the Dolls. And also, hope you enjoyed the reaction. Make sure to also hit that bell icon so you get notified whenever we upload posts and go live on the Dolls. Now let's get into the film TV reaction. Aang is a bad dad, the last Airbender. So, 3, 2, 1, let's see and find out what this will be about.
Is Avatar Aang a terrible father? Between his duties as the Avatar taking up his time, rebuilding his air nomad culture, and allegedly treating one of his children better than the others, there are a lot of people in the Avatar fandom who truly believe that Aang was a bad parent. And some go as far as to say he's abusive. But is he really? Well, today I want to settle this debate once and for all.
Okay. Let's do it.
Hello, Internet! Welcome to Film Theory, the show whose girlfriend turned into the moon.
That's rough, buddy.
You could make it a bit better by hitting that subscribe button and helping me bring balance to your YouTube subscription feed.
Also, please subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. I have no friends. Just kidding, Lego.
But hey, no pressure.
I do have my girlfriend though, but I would like more friends. Other than making friends on TikTok.
So, Avatar. At this point, this absolute goat of a series needs little introduction. Avatar is a franchise where some people can control one of the 4 traditional elements: water, fire, earth, and air. But once a generation, the Avatar is born who can control all 4 elements. The original series followed the adventures of Avatar Aang, the last airbender who has to stop a 100-year-long war alongside his friends Katara, Sokka, Toph, and Zuko. And its sequels series, The Legend of Korra, showed us what happened to those beloved characters from that series. We get to see how Team Avatar helped found cities, restarted governments, started families, and were absolutely terrible parents.
Interesting.
Wait, what? Yeah, okay, that might seem a little bit out of left field, but let me explain. See, in Korra, we meet the children of Aang.
That's most likely probably true, though. I mean, let's find out. Okay.
And Katara, Bumi, Kaya, and Tenzin. In fact, all 3 are either major supporting characters or main characters in the series.
Yeah.
But based on a lot of dialogue between these siblings, many fans have gotten the impression that Aang wasn't actually that great of a father. Like, so much so that this has become one of the biggest discussions within the Avatar fandom, with tweets, Reddit threads, and whole YouTube videos dissecting the subject. Personally, I think this is a fascinating thing to dig into. One that I've wanted to do a theory on for a couple of years, but I was having a bit of trouble approaching it in a way that felt appropriate. See, while I'm a big Avatar fan and I love these sorts of discussions in the fandom, I'm not a parent, and it felt disingenuous for me to approach this without at least asking someone with that perspective about this issue, let alone someone who actually has experience working with families that have had the sorts of problems that the Avatar fandom are pointing to here.
Okay.
Good drivers can save up to $1,200 a year with Root Insurance. We celebrate good drivers with savings.
I'm a good driver, but I don't drive a car. But I do drive my girlfriend's lovely Nokia. And I drive my lovely Lego.
Just download the app and get on the road for a bit. Root Insurance. Drive and save.
It's Dasher. There's a Vixen in there somewhere. I know there is. Alexa,
Thankfully, I knew just the people to reach out to here. Alan and Jono from Cinema Therapy. If you don't know Cinema Therapy, Alan is a professional filmmaker and Jono is a licensed therapist. And together, they dissect your favorite film and television, hoping to help you learn from their characters' successes and failures. That's perfect for what we need today, so I sat down with them to talk about their thoughts on this whole situation. You can get a link to that discussion in an unlisted video down in the description. And that's not all.
We're doing a great crossover here with the film theorists. Over on our channel, we're talking about the psychology of a hero and Korra's journey throughout the series.
That's right, you can catch me over on their channel as we dissect Korra's character arc and all of the growth she goes through in her series.
You can watch it now by clicking here, or maybe down there. I don't know where they put things on this show.
This is not our show. It's like trying to find something in someone else's kitchen. You know, like where do the links go?
Where's the carrot peeler?
And where?
Yeah.
It'll be in the description and linked at the end of the video, so make sure you go over and check that out. Oh, and also, this is probably why you're seeing that video in your subscription feed, even if you haven't heard of Cinema Therapy before today. Yeah, YouTube has a new collab.
People just don't know how to find stuff when it's yours and not theirs. But I don't have that problem with my girlfriend though. That's no bit.
Feature that we wanted to test out.
And her stuff.
I seriously think that this could be a game changer for creators here on the platform, so let me know what you think of it. But in the meantime, today we're going to get to the bottom of this discussion and settle the debate once and for all. Was Aang a terrible father? Was he abusive? Well, let's bend the truth out of this one. So first things first, why is this such a prevalent belief amongst so much of the fan base? Well, most of the claims about Aang's parenting come from just a couple of episodes of The Legend of Korra. Season 2, episodes 3 and 4, Civil Wars parts 1 and 2. Here, Kaya and Bumi break the news to Tenzin that their childhood wasn't as perfect as he remembers. While Tenzin fondly remembers time spent with Aang and vacations that they went on, his siblings point out that Tenzin was the only person really taken on those vacations.
I think your memory's a little foggy. Boomy and I weren't on those great vacations. It was always just you and Dad.
Kaya and Bumi felt like Tenzin got preferential treatment, but at the same time, Tenzin points out that he felt a massive amount of pressure to carry on the legacy of the air nomads, just like Aang did. Like, it's hard to forget, but for a hot minute there, Tenzin was also the last airbender. So one thing every Avatar character knows is that getting injured while saving the world can be a massive pain, and they have waterbending that can heal them. We're not so lucky here in the real world, but we do have something that can help, and that is the sponsor for today's theory, ZocDoc. Seriously, have you ever pulled a muscle or broken a bone and not really known what to do next? That could be scary, especially if it's a type of injury you've never dealt with before. But thankfully, you don't need to consult the spirit world to find help. You can just use ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free website that helps you search and compare doctors for your needs. To be clear, they don't give you the care themselves, but they connect you with in-network doctors, professionals, and specialists for whatever you need. Seriously, you can book appointments with more than 100,000 providers. Everything from primary care to urgent care to dental health and mental health, and even eye and skin care. It's like a one-stop shop for all of your healthcare needs. I've actually used
This feels like the first time with the sponsorship with film theory, but it isn't. But it is probably with ZocDoc, no cap.
ZocDoc to help find a primary care doctor here in Raleigh when going through my insurance turned into phone call after phone call, only to get told that there weren't any appointments available. It's also super easy to use. You can filter by who accepts your insurance, how close they are to you, and by ratings from other patients. You can even book everything online instead of over the phone, and see actual appointment times on their website and choose one to click and book your visit. Plus, you won't be waiting like you're frozen in an iceberg for 100 years.
Hey, that's true, no cap.
The appointments can happen fast, within 24 to 72 hours. So if you want to stop putting off the appointments and get the care you need from real professionals, go to ZocDoc.
That's kinda sad that... I mean, doctors are... ZocDoc is pretty much probably the only one that does appointments fast. No doubt.
.com/thefilmtheorists or click the link in the description to find a top-rated doctor today. Thanks again to ZocDoc for sponsoring this theory. And let's get back into Avatar: The Last Airbender. Now, just on the face of things, I can absolutely see why fans got this belief. It's clear that Aang spent more time with Tenzin than his other kids, and that he put a lot of very hefty expectations on Tenzin that he didn't on those other kids. Both of those things don't sound super great, but does that make him a bad father? Well, probably the first thing we're gonna want to do here is actually define what it means to be a bad parent. And this is probably gonna be a bit more challenging than you expect because, well, there are a lot of characteristics that we universally point to
Hey
as being
Siri,
good parents,
where's my
but being
notification?
bad can be way more subjective, right guys?
It's difficult. It's hard to parent well
Hey, Siri.
because every kid is different,
What's
and you
my
finally figure out how to
TikTok
parent one of them,
notification?
and then you try that on the next one, and that's a therapy bill that you're gonna have to pay at some point.
And we don't have magical element-bending adventures we can go on to bond with our kids IRL either. So generally in our research, I found 5 big recurring toxic traits cited as bad parenting. And those 5 are being overly controlling, being physically, emotionally, and verbally abusive, being overly critical, being demanding, and being neglectful.
I appreciate that you frame this as these are the toxic traits because imperfection is a given, but imperfection and toxicity are not the same thing. And what I would say on the flip side is that the opposite of those things are the parenting traits that we aspire to.
Right, so for example, instead of being neglectful, you're involved and meet the child's needs where they're at. Instead of being physically, emotionally, or verbally abusive, you can make sure that they feel cared and loved for. That sort of thing.
A good parent responds
Okay.
to the child in front of them and sees the
Sure.
needs and the heart of that child. I would add to that openly displayed affection and accountability.
Hey, makes perfect sense to me. So, looking at these definitions, how does Aang fare for these? Well, to be clear, we don't really see a lot of Aang's parenting skills in the actual show, just the fallout of the kids that he raised. But there are a few things on this list I think we can pretty easily and safely knock off. Like, I just do not see Aang being physically abusive, demanding, or controlling in a way that becomes toxic. That is way out of character to the boy that we see in the original show, the flashbacks we see in Korra, and how any of the characters, including his own children, think about Aang when they talk about him. You might be able to say that he was overly critical of Tenzin because of their airbender training, but that's a real gray area there, and there's a fine line between criticism and feedback.
It's part of the duty of a parent to
Yes.
give feedback to the child. Otherwise, it's just free range, and that's neglect.
Right.
That's detachment. But there's a difference between feedback and criticism. A criticism is an attack. Feedback is addressing a behavior.
And given what we see from Tenzin in The Legend of Korra and how he teaches airbending, feedback seems more accurate. While he and Korra clash slightly, otherwise, Tenzin is a level-headed and understanding teacher, not at all overly critical to the point of being abusive.
Hey, it's Dad. Why did you order tattoo cream?
Okay, guys, we have one more.
At all overly critical to the point of being abusive. This was actually something we covered way more of over on that Psychology of a Hero video over on Cinema Therapy, so go check that out after this video is done if you want to hear more about it. Probably the biggest
Okay.
quote-unquote sin Aang does is showing favoritism to Tenzin over Kaya and Bumi by spending more time with him, which you could argue is a form of emotional neglect to the other children. To be clear, there are 2 types of neglect, legal and emotional. Legal neglect is basically a failure to provide a child with the necessities they need to survive.
That's true.
Stuff like food, clothes, shelter, medical assistance, etc., etc.
Okay.
I think we can pretty safely say that Aang isn't guilty of this, and I don't think anyone's even accusing him of it either. Emotional neglect, however, is a bit more complicated. This is when a caregiver fails to provide the emotional or psychological support, validation, and attention a child needs. And that is where the crux of the argument against Aang comes from. That Aang spent more time with Tenzin because he was an airbender and supposedly neglected his parental duties with Kaya and Bumi as a result. Sadly, this sort of dynamic isn't uncommon. Roughly 65% of families display some level of favoritism to one child over others, with some researchers referring to this
Yeah, that's true.
as parents' differential treatment, or PDT, which can lead to strained sibling dynamics. That being said, a recent study that examined parental favoritism suggested that favoritism is natural to a degree. Like, parents are drawn to their daughters, their eldest, and children who share their temperaments and interests, which, interestingly, describes each one of Aang's children. Bumi is the eldest, Kaya is the daughter, and Tenzin had the most in common with Aang. Now, to be clear, none of this is trying to excuse Aang or any of the negative feelings these characters have towards the way he parented them. Regardless of where we land in this discussion, it is true that Aang's parenting left Tenzin feeling a ton of pressure, did somewhat fray the sibling dynamic of his children, and left Bumi feeling inferior to Tenzin, even if just a little bit. But, just like with most things in life, it's more complicated than it first appears on the surface. See, while we don't have a ton of direct evidence showing Aang's parenting style and effectiveness, we can get a good idea of how it worked. So, when it comes to a show like this, we have three real sources of information. There's what's in the text, which is what is literally shown to us on screen. There's what out-of-universe materials tell us, like interviews with the creators. And then there's subtext. This is stuff we can figure out based on how characters act or talk about something that isn't directly stated. Honestly, there aren't a lot of conversations throughout the series directly saying either, man, Aang sucked as a father, or Aang was the best dad you could ask for. The closest we really get is a line from Kaya in the Turf Wars comic, where she says that Aang was, quote, nothing but supportive when she came out as gay. But outside of that, we do get a lot of subtext. For example, there's a popular saying that 80% of parenting is modeling. Basically, it's the example you set for your children and whether or not they follow that example. So the idea is that if you set a good example, you're a good parent, and your children will act like you. Now, that exact statistic, 80%, is BS, but there is some weight to this saying. For example, one study pointed out that if parents model healthy eating habits, their children are 3 times more likely to have the same eating habits. And another study found that parents who donate their money or time to charitable causes have an 80% chance to pass on those philanthropic habits to their kids. So, can we apply that same pattern from those studies to anything else? Like perhaps in the parenting styles of Aang's own children? Well, at the time of the show, only Tenzin is a parent, but we do get a lot of information about those relationships.
Tenzin's a good parent.
It's one of the best things about him.
He meets his kids where they're at, parents each one of them a bit differently. The subtext there is, listen, he learned this somewhere, right?
Exactly. If Tenzin modeled his parenting style on Aang, then that is already very solid foundations for seeing how Aang parented himself. And we know that Tenzin treats these kids very well. He doesn't appear to give any of them preferential treatment. In fact, when Jinora becomes a notably young airbending master, it's actually Tenzin who's hesitant to give her that title. Partially out of fairness, and partially because he wants her to enjoy childhood just a little bit more. And despite feeling like he's putting his duties as a parent aside to work with the Republic City Council and to help rebuild air nomad culture, Tenzin is still a very present father, spending time with his kids and training with them. He even brings his 3 kids to help him train Korra in airbending. And taking this idea of modeling just one step further, we can look at how Tenzin, Bumi, and Kaya all turned out as people.
All 3 of these kids grew up to be incredible people. That doesn't happen in a vacuum. You don't have one good parent, Katara, and one absolute dog crap parent in Aang, and all 3 kids grow up pretty well adjusted and heroic and self-sacrificing and just good people. That only happens if both parents, at least to an extent, are doing the right things.
100% correct. And in fact, we can take it even beyond that. A factor that should be considered here is that Aang wasn't parenting these children alone. Yeah, the fact that Katara was also present in these kids' lives is something that I often see left out of these conversations. Though it's not one size fits all, and this isn't the case in every family. In many family units, including this one we see in the Avatar series, parenting is something done in partnership. It's a couple working together to raise their kids while also filling in for the weaknesses of their partner in parenting when and where they can. I don't think it's a controversial statement to say that Katara was probably a pretty great mom. She was always very nurturing and loving to everyone around her, let alone her family and the people that she cared about. She almost certainly picked up some of the slack when Aang was dealing with his duties as the Avatar. And, I mean, Katara is a strong, opinionated character. When she sees an injustice, she isn't gonna let it stand.
I will never, ever turn my back on people who need me.
Don't you you think that standard would extend into her family life, too?
She's not gonna stay with Aang if he's not living up to the standard, right? Like, she's not gonna put up with that crap.
Alright, so then there's the case of Tenzin getting those special vacations and trips along with Aang where Bumi and Kaya were left out. On the surface, this one looks like clear favoritism being shown to Tenzin, and I mean, inarguably, he did get to spend more time with their father. No one in or out of the show argues against that, and that right there makes things a bit complicated because it also makes sense.
My dad
Yeah.
is an attorney. My uncle is an attorney. My cousins are attorneys. My brother is an attorney. And I'm a family therapist. It is unavoidable that these two are going to be in the corner sometimes talking talking shop about things I don't understand. It's not about parenting. It's about dual relationships. Aang is Tenzin's
Okay.
father. He's also a mentor to an airbender. And because the lines are blurry, it feels like favoritism.
Exactly right, Jono. Aang and Tenzin's relationship is so complicated because of the unique circumstances they're both put in. For years there, they were both literally the last airbenders, and they only had each other to share in that massive pressure, like we said earlier. The rest of their family could absolutely sympathize, but they could never fully, completely understand. And Aang had the additional burden of having to pass on his entire people's culture to Tenzin in the limited time they had together.
There's just a time commitment. You've got to teach him all the history. You've got to teach him airbending. You've got to, there's a lot of just time that you have to spend with that. And if it hadn't been Tenzin, if it had just been Bob down the street, who was the only airbender, he would have been spending that time with Bob.
Not only that, but if we really want to think several layers deep here about these special vacations Aang and Tenzin went on, well, just think of the situation Aang knew he was putting Tenzin in. There's a ton of pressure to continue an entire civilization put on a kid's shoulder.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a lot for any one single person, let alone a child.
And we're like, well, it was for the training, it was for this or that. Maybe it also is because Tenzin had so much pressure on him that Aang is like, let's go have some fun. Let's go release the steam. And you need this individualized attention because you've got pressure on you that Bumi and Kaya don't.
Now, don't get me or the guys wrong. In an ideal world, a parent would want to spend an equal amount of time with all of their kids. They'd want to go on these sort of special, individualized vacations with all of them. But in practice, especially if that parent is also the last person carrying on an entire culture and a high-status political figure like the Avatar, there isn't enough time in the world for that. Aang and Katara had to prioritize what they did for each of their kids, and given the pressure that Tenzin was under, it's not a stretch that those two agreed that Tenzin and Aang needed to spend some time together that wasn't about all the responsibility of rebuilding the air nomads, and thus, the vacations. And one more point here is that Bumi and Kaya, and a lot of people commenting about this online, have a limited perspective.
Well, and also, Bumi and Kaya don't have kids. And I'm not saying that therefore their perspective is invalid. I am saying their perspective is different.
It's limited.
And I think this is true of sometimes people online who are critics of Aang as a parent, and they say this is terrible writing and it totally destroyed Aang.
This is a really important part of this conversation online that I think gets lost a lot, and why I wanted to bring on actual parents to talk about this. We live in an online culture right now that really thrives on black and white issues. Something is either good or it's bad. Someone is either the hero or the villain of the week. There is no gray area between the best thing ever or literally the worst. And that's just not how the real world works. That's not how real families work. And that's not how parenting works.
Actual abusive parents, the kids are critical of them, the kids may have their own kids, and they still think their parents were abusive or toxic or awful. Good people trying to be good parents who are just flawed at it and imperfect at it have kids who are critical until the kids have kids.
And then they go, oh, I was much angrier until I had my own kids and was like, damn. She did the best she could.
You know, after all of this research, diving into the discussions on forums and YouTube and sitting down to talk with Alan and Jono, something I really want to bring this discussion to is this question. Even if Aang was a flawed parent, not a bad one, but a flawed parent, isn't that okay? Not that we shouldn't want to be the best parents we can, or allow ourselves to settle for nothing less than the best for the children in our lives. But a core theme in the Avatar franchise is that avatars aren't perfect. Each and every one of them is flawed because they have to balance incredibly complex and demanding worldwide responsibilities on top of their personal lives. Avatar Roku let his friendship with Fire Lord Sozin cloud his judgment, which led to a 100-year war that killed hundreds of thousands, potentially millions. Kyoshi ushered in an era of global peace, but was also ruthless and violent, setting up the dominoes for the Earth Kingdom's corrupt ruling class in the present day. Kuruk spent his life dealing with spirits attacking the material world in secret, sacrificing his personal relationships and being labeled a do-nothing avatar. Yang Chen failed to balance her duties in the physical and spiritual worlds, siding with humans more often than not, leading to the rise of those dark spirits that Kuruk had to deal with in the first place. Doesn't it make Aang a better character if he had flaws like this too? If he wasn't a perfect parent on top of not being a perfect person? That he had both successes and failures as a parent, just like he had both successes and failures as an avatar? Someone having flaws and shortcomings is not a moral failing of a person, a parent, or an avatar. It's just a part of life.
Well, listen, we've all watched the show. We know Aang is a good avatar who made plenty of mistakes. From watching Korra, we see that Aang is a good parent who made plenty of mistakes. And that's in the text. We get to see it.
And that is really the final nail in the coffin of the idea that Aang was somehow a bad or neglectful or abusive parent, because none of his kids end up thinking so in anything we see in the series. Kaya remembers him as nothing but supportive in the comics. Umi hopes that he's made him proud.
Sorry I didn't turn out to be an airbender like you hoped, but I've tried my best to keep the world safe. Hope I made you proud.
And all three of the kids remember their childhood and their family as being a happy one.
That is one good-looking family, huh?
That's one happy family.
And in the end, that is just not what would happen with children of an abusive parent. Was Aang perfect? No, but he did his best. And that isn't a theory.
That's just some therapy.
Some cinema therapy.
And cut. Thank you again to my friends Alan and Jono for helping me out on this theory and providing that invaluable insight. And if you want to see more of us, remember to go check out Cinema Therapy's video on the psychology of a hero of Korra. You won't regret it.
Okay. Let me rewind this. Okay.
And that isn't a theory.
That's just some therapy.
Some cinema therapy.
And cut. Thank you again to my friends Alan and Jono for helping me out on this theory and providing that invaluable insight. And if you want to see more of us, remember to go check out Cinema Therapy's video on the psychology of a hero of Korra. You won't regret it.
Okay. So, if you like the reaction, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Tell us what you want us to react next. Until next time, Jaden Bold, I'll see you next time. And I hope you liked the reaction.